All right, we're back. What's up, gigs? We're recording. That's good. What were you gonna say?
Oh, are we recording?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't. Never mind.
Okay, cool. Well, we're back. I forget what week it is. We're like week 7 or something like that. I'm Ammon. We got gigs. You should know us by now. And we have Ryan here, one of our buddies with us. You want to intro yourself?
Right.
Say whatever you want to say.
He's game.
I'm Ryan. I was in the Navy, so I like men.
Okay, that great intro. Yeah, something that you'll notice, Ryan, I forgot to tell you, Gigs and I have the form of ADHD that we're kind of swaying back and forth and saying and doing stuff. If it bothers you, we're sorry, but we've kind of owned up that unless we take Adderall during these podcasts, we're not going to not be swaying around, and so we kind of have become used to that. So you might be the person sitting still doing whatever your whole thing, but we're gonna be out here just stimming the whole time. So, in case you noticed
I
that.
took my Adderall. I'm on drugs.
Oh, okay. Dang.
Why
I
did
should.
you take? Oh, you fell for the big pharma corpo. It's a scam. It's all scam.
Adderall does
We're
work
not gonna
sometimes.
say what kind of doctor prescribed you Adderall. We know we can't say that.
Or meth, so I took the high road.
Yeah, right.
They're
the same thing, I think.
Are they not?
Yeah.
One is just like has a little bit more like a certain type of salt that makes it like less bad for you or something like that.
One you get from the black guy down the street, and one you get from your doctor.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
we can't say what kind of doctor.
I don't know if Ryan even knows that joke, but I don't want to explain that here. So this past week, not much has. A lot has changed. We're about to get going, jumping straight into politics because I want to talk about this. Oh, it looks like Gideon's seeing an angel real fast. Who is that?
It's Garrett.
Oh, hi, Garrett. Oh, I didn't know.
Conversations with you right now.
We're just gonna let this roll. So this past week has been pretty crazy. Have either one of you been keeping up with the like blitz train that has been the Trump presidency so far?
Trying.
I work the blitz train, brother. I'm one of the conductors.
Hey Garrett, how you doing?
I throw people off the train is what I do.
Oh, I didn't know Garrett was off today. We could have had him in here too. Oh well.
It's been wild, dude.
Yeah. So the thing that just came out this morning that we can get into, whoever was the Secretary of State has been asking for stuff on the Epstein files, and apparently they've been like hidden from her. And then she finally got all the documents. And then this morning she was like, yeah, we're not releasing anything that has anything to do with any security, like any government security information. So anything that is considered national assets, we're not going to talk about anymore.
Well, you know how dumb of a broad statement that is?
Yeah, did you see that? I forget the exact wording that she used, but essentially she just confirmed that there's a lot of information having to do with Epstein that is directly related to like U.S. government assets.
Yeah, that could mean anything. I mean, Gideon's a government asset.
Mm-hmm.
So but it's like if Gideon was going on the plane to Epstein's,
army, so.
like I feel like if some random infantryman was going to Epstein's island,
I would have told you guys about it.
Well, it wouldn't be anything insane, and I feel like our government or some MP would just out it, like right?
It would be it would be me. It would be me, and I'd be like, "Yo, Ammon." For some reason, these chicks have really small tits, and I can't figure out why.
That's dark.
I don't understand. The police are at my door. I just went to an island.
But I'm just like, why are we protecting the people that are doing that, and why is someone who's supposed to who wasn't that woman? Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up on Twitter so we can actually get the facts right. Where is it at? Give me one sec. Why isn't... Oh, well, it's not in here. I didn't save it. Why is someone who is supposed to be one of the people that Trump hired now coming in here and saying, like, we're going to redact a certain portion of the Epstein files? So first first we're doing the victims, which kind of makes sense. Next, we're doing the we're going to redact anyone that is a part of the government or something like that. And then people are saying that here in the next couple of days or whatever, it's going to be, we're going to redact this list, and then we're going to redact these people because they're protected, and then it's going to end up being like 4 people, and that's all it's going to be. And
Maybe
it's
the same people you already know of.
But like, my thought is like, if I put myself in the shoes of the government, and let's say I'm trying to actually do good, I can make an argument that says, yes, we shouldn't. If there is a government asset that we can use to make America better and safer, we should make sure that they're not outed on the Epstein files for some reason or another. Is that a good enough argument for the public not to know?
No. And I guarantee you it's probably a president's or it's, some congressman that went. It's just them getting protection.
Well, it's probably something along the lines of how Trump told the New York DA or whatever to drop the case against the New York mayor, like the corruption case that he had, where he made, what was it, like $100,000 or something like that, in like favors or something, because he's like the first New York mayor that's like willing to play ball with Trump.
Yeah,
And so it's like, all right.
Sorry,
At least I think that's why they did it.
I don't remember the full
why
story.
they said
That seemed a little odd to me. I didn't necessarily like that, but I didn't know the full story behind all of that, the New York mayor kind of thing.
I don't know the full story of it, but the way I see it is that like he's the first guy in New York in like who knows how long, even when before he was trying to run for president, that would sit down with Trump and like talk to him about like doing stuff. And so it's like,
Well, and Epstein had fingers in different pies of the government, right? Wasn't he some sort of set with the CIA or something along those lines?
Well,
yeah,
that's what
he was
everyone
an intelligence
thinks.
asset.
We don't know. It seems like by this lady saying we're going to protect people that are government assets, it kind of semi-confirms that belief that he was a security honeypot operation manager kind of thing. Like he
That's the only thing I can think of is he was in some sort of operations like through his connection to the CIA that they just don't want public yet. I mean, that would be the only explanation that
But is that a good enough
semi-okay,
explanation for us to not find out that there are 4 or 5 senators that were knowingly taking part of this operation?
I think the only reason it would be, semi-okay would be if it's, actively threatening the lives of operators or someone in the field. But even then, the wording I would use is we can't release it right now, but we're taking steps that when we can, we're going to, act on the info that we have.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into the JFK stuff. Supposedly some of that stuff was supposed to be released, but it hasn't, or I'm not keeping up with it a bunch, isn't it? Do you guys know, like, there were supposed to be some dates, they came in past, and we don't have them released on the government website yet? It's like, that's been long enough away. There's probably not any soldiers that are going to be, no one's going to be in harm's way if the information... Yeah.
Didn't he read it? Didn't he read it and he said that like
he's like, you wouldn't release it if I had read it.
Yeah.
Which is like, what is that supposed to mean?
He's like, if you read it, you wouldn't release it either. And it was just like, what does that mean? Like,
well, how about let us decide,
So like, I guess this kind of we keep coming back to this issue, and I kind of want to like drill in specifically on this issue. There seems to be some type of information that it's okay for the common citizen to not know about, because if they did, it would put genuinely good American operations at risk. And then there's a gray area of information that is like ends justify the means. So it's like bad stuff that's happening, but the end goal is to make America or our interests safer. So it's like, what access does the United States American people, however you want to say it, what does the American public deserve to know and not know and everything like that? Like, where's that line at? Because it seems like, yeah, I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm saying? We keep coming to this issue, like with Epstein, with JFK. It's like there's certain classified information, only a small number of people know it. And like they keep saying no, we can't because of this interest, because it's in
At
your
what
best
point
interest
is
to
it-
not know.
At what point is it wrong to sell weapons to Iran to fund the Contras?
Yeah.
Well, do you think it's something like Roscoe's Basilisk, where it's like, what do they call that? A thought virus? They're like, if you know what's in those files, you're gonna never trust the government again. So that's the only thing I can think of. Like, there's no operations currently that can be connected back to the 70s.
Well,
But who knows, or the 60s? But who knows?
yeah, my thing is like the 70s happened and a lot of us already know about it. A lot of us already don't trust the government. And it's like, I trust the government as far as I can throw it. I think the government is good. I think we need civil society. But it's also like, I also don't trust a lot of people that are in it, but I still think it should happen. And so it's like, how many Americans are in that situation where they're like, I don't trust any of these politicians, but I believe civil society is important. And it's like, does that make sense what I'm saying? The argument of like, well, if we release this, nobody will ever trust the government again. It's like we might not have civil unrest even if everybody chooses to not trust the government. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but
But I wonder. I agree with you. I think it's something to do with along with those lines of like, well, if we do release this, then people aren't going to trust. But
But
I
how am I supposed
agree
to trust you
where
if you
most
don't
of us
release
don't
it?
trust the government anyway. But I wonder if for them it's
That's a good
just
point.
sort of like, I don't know. We don't want to lose everybody's trust. There's at least some people that still trust us.
no, I disagree. I think trust brings trust.
Yeah,
So it,
I would agree.
yeah, but I think that if, and I think I've fallen into this trap before where it's like, if you're keeping a secret, it feels great. You're like I'm a spy. I'm doing, or like whenever you're keeping a secret and it has like a good end to it, it's like I don't know, you get caught in a lie, and if you're good at it and you're smart, it feels fun to do it. And so I'm just like thinking there's a lot of like CIA agents or NSA agents or whoever else, and they're keeping secrets because they like to, and that's their career, and it's a game to them. Not and the words that are coming out of their mouth of, well, what if no one trusts it, or what, actually don't mean anything and are actually not true. Those are just like things that are said um to keep them like
In the game.
to keep them in the game, to keep the ball rolling. It's like my professional career of espionage is going to end if we tell all the secrets and the government doesn't collapse, kind of thing.
Ryan, what's your theory on the JFK assassination too? So I just wanted to ask you that at some point.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
Well, first I'll say my opinion. I've been trying to justify it for the politicians, but my opinion is there should be nothing that's classified unless it's actively endangering an asset, right?
Yeah.
Operators or
Mhm.
CIA, whatever. And even then, like to a certain extent, if there's a mission that DevGru is going on in 2 months or whatever, then keep that classified. But then as soon as they do that mission, as soon as their lives are, not in danger, if that information gets out, that should be out, right? Um, that's the level of openness I think that our government should have with the American people.
Yeah.
And I get it, like they don't want it's sort of the same thing with gun tubers, right? The issue that people have with gun tubers. Well, if you're teaching people how to do this stuff on YouTube, then some Chinese operator is going to be on your channel learning how to do our techniques from a former Navy SEAL or SF guy. But in my opinion, is I think it's going to help more people than the bad guys are going to get from it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think that there is a small cognitive bias that I think you and I have, which is like in business, there's always so much more to gain from giving out information and from helping others, because a rising tide raises all boats. And so like the devil's advocate would be like, well, this isn't business. This is statecraft. This is espionage. This is bad foreign leaders who want to destroy us and where there are no rules. And my answer to that would actually be maybe business is a better, more evolved form of a way of working, um, it, in my opinion. But anyway, but to directly ask you, what do you think about the JFK though? Like specifically, what do you think happened there?
I think
Or you don't have
I
any?
have a really interesting theory, and I actually have derived this theory. I heard this from a podcast that Evan Hafer did. Evan Hafer,
I'll be right
the
back.
CEO of Black
Okay.
Rifle. But I did my own research on it. I think that George H.W. Bush is directly involved in JFK's assassination. He was a part of the CIA complex, and his family actually had stake in the OSS before they became the CIA.
Yeah.
A lot of their oil companies, like one of the operations within Operation Paperclip, was actually named after his oil company.
Yep.
That was before he became the CIA director.
And all of this
So
is
I think
provable
they have-
data. Yeah. At least the ties are. Yeah.
And so I definitely think that George H.W. Bush had something to do with it. I think it's what they're doing right now with school shooters, which is they're going to these people that are vulnerable. So they went to, oh my gosh, what's his name? Lee Harvey Oswald. And I think they knew he was vulnerable and, he was sort of sympathetic to the Russian state or the Soviets at the time. And so I think they knew like we could convert this guy and get this guy to do this. But I don't think he was the only shooter either. The whole magic bullet,
Yeah,
Zapruder
yeah.
film type of stuff. But from an operational standpoint, I think that their fall guy was always going to be Lee Harvey Oswald, but I think that the CIA was directly involved with multiple shooters on scene.
What do you think the motive was? Or like if you had a couple guesses of like why did the intelligence apparatus believe that it was better to have him not living than living in that moment?
I don't think that he was able to be controlled to the extent that they wanted him to be. There's kind of the famous story of them putting a lot of the false flag operations across his desk, the CIA, and he denied a lot of them and said, "No, we're not doing this." And JFK wasn't a perfect president politically, but I think for them, they wanted someone who's going to be a lot more pliable to what they wanted them to do. Um, and JFK was sympathetic to a lot of the hippie movement. He just kind of contrasted a lot of the ideals of the CIA at the time, and I think that he was dangerous in their mind because I think a lot of people aligned with JFK. He was a very popular president, so in their mind, I think that the longer he was in charge, presidents don't really stop being president after the fact, right? We've seen that with George Bush. We've seen that with Obama. And so I think for them, they were afraid that JFK was going to continue his influence past his presidency. So that would be my theory is why they took him out.
Yeah, so something that I recently came into contact with was the idea that the vice president at the time, I forget who became the president after Johnson. There's a book around how he was kind of like psychologically a Stalin-esque figure. He believed that he was here to help the common person. He was here to help the disenfranchised. But behind closed doors, he was perfectly comfortable, like calling people to have their careers ending, to have them killed, and he had close ties with like CIA and other situations like that. And the book illustrates how he had pretty high motive to do it, and how the book I forget exactly like what he had ties, but there's like video evidence of later on that were declassified showing that he had some guy killed, and there's like a video of two of the guys talking about it afterwards. And so it would be interesting to see. Hopefully we get the information, and it's like if it was that situation, it's actually a little less like organized. It's more like some spiteful, capable person who had motive
And
organized,
means.
who had the means and the motive to organize and do this. It was like, it actually, the CIA wasn't actually disappointed about the decision, but they hadn't thought about killing him yet. They thought that they could like keep controlling him and manipulating him, kind of thing. And it was just the vice president who was embarrassed by him, because sometime before that there was a couple times where he kept like embarrassing him, and he like lost the presidency to him, and had to be the vice president. Like, it could have been like it was one person who was spiteful.
He
who
was
had-
also most likely going to get taken off the ticket for re-election as well.
Oh, and there was something else that I forgot about that was like key to the book. There was a lawsuit where J. Edgar Hoover, or not, is that who it was? Yeah, Hoover. He was about to be like arrested and like in prison because he was handing out um like fraudulent deals to farmers in Texas, that, and he essentially he was doing espionage, and he would like, all of the information was out, and he totally got found out about it. And if later on this situation went like got in, it would land him in prison. So it was like, kill the president, become president, then I am absolved of whatever I've done in the past, and I can erase my history. So it's like, I'd be interested to see if it was the CIA organized and they just were like, we're tired of this guy, get rid of it, or if it was one singular guy who was a spiteful Stalin-esque figure that somehow got into the presidency and did it that way.
When I wonder too, I mean, if you think about it, there's a lot of correlation between Trump and JFK. I mean,
I agree.
not in terms of a lot of their political views, but
Anti-establishment.
JFK came from a very affluent family. The Kennedys were very well off, and he was sort of an idealist, right? So he came in with plans to change the world. And the CIA probably wanted someone like Johnson, and Johnson was a turd. He was a politician through and through. And so they knew that once he got in, then he was going to do whatever they wanted, because then they'd probably just give him backdoor deals left and right of like, well, you can have this or that after your presidency, or we're going to make you look really good. What I'm interested in is if they start to release a lot of the false flag operations post JFK's death. I think once we see what the United States had done post his death, it'll give us a lot of evidence of why he was taken out.
Yeah, I really hope that it comes out, because in my opinion, the longer it stays in, the longer the like establishment apparatus wins.
Is eroded.
Well, no, and whenever it comes out, in my mind, this is very simplistic, and it's not a perfect representation of the truth, but it's like, there seems to be throughout history and now throughout the it's government. Government is a concentration of power, and there are good people and bad people who end up in government, and then there is the voice of the people, and more often than not, it's the voice of the people, the good farmers, truckers, and people that just want to be left alone and have a good life and be with their family and go fishing. And it's like which could be called populism, versus like the establishment government, or at least the negative aspects of the government that openly or secretly defy the voice of the people. And so, because I think that in the government there are two types of people. There are people that are populist and do what they think is best for the people, when it could actually be against their own personal interests, like making money. And so I think that the information coming out about him would be a populist, like a movement more towards populism of people. It is the government. We understand how the government works, and we understand what happened, and we're going to do our best to move forward and have the government work for the people. Because so I think that I just hope it happens, and I hope that we get to see it.
Well, I think we're seeing that now, right? I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we definitely big move towards that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I'm an independent by political party or whatever. But the bullshit that we've had to go through for the last 15 years of American politics, of all this wokeism that's taken over, has pushed me from being almost, I mean, I've always been right leaning, but more of a center independent, way more to the right. When people were, going hard after Trump for these stupid reasons, it makes you want to jump in to the fight, right? And defend Trump.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing right now what you were saying is all these farmers, all these people that just want to do their job and be left alone. The government overplays their hand sometimes and says, you know what, we're gonna keep taking more and more until the people have to make their voices heard again.
Yeah. A little bit of change, but it's probably going to end up in some of the same territory. And then any of you can bring up anything you want to bring up, by the way. But have you guys seen the stuff on the Panama Canal?
No.
Like,
Oh,
what do you
So-
mean?
like the Chinese
Well,
influence on the Panama.
Well, so yeah, that seems to be but this morning or last night, it looks like it was confirmed that there was like a 10 billion, don't quote me on this, but somewhere in the order of single digit to low multi-digit billion-dollar deal done between BlackRock and a Chinese bank, where BlackRock bought some of the key levees or whatever you want. I don't know what they're actually called in a canal. Some of the key parts of the Panama Canal. And so the weird dynamic here is Trump has openly said we want to get the Panama Canal back from China because they control a large part of it, and we decided to leave it in the 70s or something like that. And this is kind of a deal that's out of the blue that we don't know if Trump had his hands in it or not, because we don't know if the establishment that is a part of the government that's a sort, because it's probably, sorry, I'm saying a bunch, but anyway, BlackRock bought a part of the Panama Canal, and the big question is that a win for the U.S. and a win for trade relations, or is that actually a loss because it's actually Trump's enemies, which would be like the deep state or the intelligence apparatus, now have control of it instead of him and the people having control of it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be an interesting thing to play out. Is there's domestic politics, which is Trump versus the deep state, and then there's international politics, which would be China v. US. And so this huge trade deal is going to be might be looked back as like a domestic loss but a global win, and it could be a major part of the like global trade war that's going on. So I don't know if it's going to be a big thing. Yeah, we can jump into another subject, or this is going to lead straight into like global trade wars and geopolitics on that. So we can start talking about that, or we can move to a couple other subjects that we could bring up that I want to talk about.
What? Give me 1 sec. I'm gonna change to my AirPods because I'm getting so much delay on this mic. Give me
Oh,
1
you
sec.
are? Okay. No, you're good. You're good. And I can probably actually just pause it.
I don't know. I'm of two minds because you talked about BlackRock, and you've talked about like how they invested down there. So I'll give you two separate thoughts. My first thought is that everything Trump is doing is great because you have to look at it from the broader spectrum. There's so many people that are complaining like he's ruining our relations with the other people, but the perspective that I have, and that like I'm sure you've seen getting into it within the military, is that we are the world's protectors, right? And that's how we've always been since NATO's inception. And so we've dumped our money into Europe, we've dumped our money into Australia for their defense. And Trump is just finally saying, "How about you guys be independent a little bit? How about we stop just funding you?"
Yeah.
It hasn't even been that. If you look at like the NATO treaty, it says that because America spends what is it like 54% of their
Yeah.
is it 50 of their
So like of the annual
GDP or
budget
whatever?
of the annual income of NATO,
annual-
we are 54% of the funding.
Well, yeah,
And
of our
everybody
like
else
annual
combined is
income.
lower.
Everybody else combined is
yeah.
less than half.
Yeah, so we have a 54% like defense budget or something like that, and then the NATO treaty states that to be in NATO you have to hit I think it's like 2.8% of your like country's income or something like that must be defense spending.
Yeah.
and no one has hit that, I think, since like the end of the Cold War or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
and it's but well, I feel like it's given them a sense of complacency, right? Like we don't need to spend because they always talk about their social programs and blah blah blah, but they don't need to spend all of that money on their defense. And so because of us, because we've always been there.
Mhm.
We're the
Yeah.
world's, protector. And so I think what Trump is doing is we've been in such economically bad time for a long time. I mean,
Where I'm at. And real quick digression, I like what you said, and it made me have an idea. You said like there could be a chance that by proxy, the American tax dollars are actually funding the social programs in Europe. And
Mhm.
so the idea is because we spend so much on defense, they don't have to, and then they free up their budget for social programs. So it's like two levels of abstraction away of we are like it's like yeah, that's just interesting to me that I've never thought about that. There's a chance that because of the way the defense structure is set up in the world right now between NATO, there's a chance that we are funding social
well,
programs in other countries. It's like not only are we trying to fund, we have social programs here, but like, yeah. Anyway, keep. What were you saying, Gigs?
I was gonna say like the only countries that have played ball, and there's like memes about this where like it's like the United States talking to NATO, and it's like you guys need to spend more money on defense because like there's threats about, and I actually saw this before the Ukraine thing popped off the first time I saw this, and like Europe just kind of like no, like we're not gonna do that. But then if you switch to the other side of the country and you go to the Pacific and you're like, hey, Philippines, hey, Singapore, who else? Like Taiwan, Japan, like South Korea, like you guys need to spend more on your defense budget and we'll help you, but like you guys need to spend more. And all those countries are like, please, oh, you got it. Like, Japan has like massively increased their military, or their self-defense force.
Right.
The Koreans have hugely like increased their military. Like the Philippines are like begging the U.S. to help them build a better navy, uh,
Which is
and like willing to.
yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, this kind of leads into maybe adding business to geopolitics, and espionage is actually the right thing to do because this is Trump wheeling and dealing, and it's like let's raise each other up. You having a strong army across an ocean next to uh one of our supposed enemies,
Next to a
China.
country that no one likes. No one likes them. No one gets along with them.
So it's like yeah,
And Japan and Taiwan know that they're on the chopping block first if China, something with China goes down. Uh, the South Korea knows that if something with China goes down, they're gonna get attacked by North Korea or China or both, just like in the Korean War, where
yeah,
like the biggest battle in the Korean War wasn't even really North Koreans; it was Chinese, and
well, and I
like
think that talks to uh, when you know that you're when you're aware of the world right around you, then you're more willing to defend yourself. You're more willing to train to defend yourself. And what I mean by that is like look at the more exterior nations of Europe: France,
Poland.
Germany, the UK. I'm talking like on the
Oh
away
yeah,
from Russia.
oh okay, yeah, yeah,
They're way softer, right? Especially like Germany and all those places. They're like, no, please keep funding us in our defense. We don't want to do it ourselves, and it's because they're a couple steps removed from Russia, right? They think they're
yeah,
pretty safe, even though they're being invaded. That's a whole different topic, but they're being invaded by a different force.
yeah.
Um,
We can talk about that. I mean,
but but you look at Poland, you look at Finland, you look at all those places that are button up right next to Russia, and they're like, if we don't defend ourselves, then Russia's just going to roll through, and they have historical ties to being invaded by different countries, and so and then
especially Russia.
yeah, and when you look at what you were talking about, gigs, Japan, Philippines, South Korea, like all those places are in constant fluctuation and warfare, and so those people are more willing. And so you're looking at a softer population that have been resting on their laurels. They haven't been in a conflict in a long time, like Germany or the UK and or Canada. I mean, same thing with Canada. Um, and they get soft, and so they think, well, we don't really need to spend that much on defense, especially if the United States is going to be funding it for us. Um, it's just interesting, and you can almost juxtapose that with like the American people, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I th- to kind of like zoom out even more, because I think that
mhm,
something that seems to be like a global part of like this idea is something that I came into contact recently. Gideon and I talked about it last week, but I kind of wanted to hear what your thoughts on it, Ryan. Are the idea that subconsciously for the past like 40 or 50 years, we've kind of been taught and thought to believe that we live at the end of history, but it's actually the fact that we don't. And so like what this means is like Star Trek came out in the 70s and 80s, and it was like a lot of there's a lot of people, we had been in a Cold War, and we haven't really had any hot wars close to home. And so it's like a lot of Western culture, the US, there's a lot of subsects of the US that believe that like we should be pacifists at all costs and never go into war. And there's a lot of the Western culture, especially like France and all the countries that don't want to pay for their defense. And I'm starting to think
Well,
that the capacity for
France
violence, yeah. Well, what about
France is
France?
just. Oh, I was just gonna say France is a great country ruined by Paris.
yeah,
Well,
the people of France want to fight. The politicians of France are cups.
Yeah.
and so I think that I hope I'm wrong on this, but I'm starting to have a theory that we have experienced a crazy amount of peace relative in the world, in especially in the US and in the world since World War II. There have been the Cold War, you know, Vietnam was a pretty major conflict. We've had like Desert Storm and other conflicts like that, and there's been some civil wars in Africa. And I think that was because the US was a global hegemon, and we kind of controlled and kept everything at bay, and we did a lot of statecraft to keep it that way. And for one reason or another, this is a huge topic that we can talk about later on or don't have to get into, but like United States seems to be losing its like global protector status, global like what is he? What?
No, ignore. Just keep going.
um and it seems to be like we're kind of like we don't have the power that we used to. The US dollar isn't as strong as it was. We don't control the world the way that we used to in the way that we would like to. And I'm starting to think that in the next 10 years, 15 years, like we could have a lot of major global conflict, and we could have a lot of how do you say, like we could even be entering into like what happened after what do we call the period that like the Middle Ages before the Renaissance?
The Dark Ages.
Like
and the
Dark
just
Ages.
a we could be entering like in the next 10 years it could be a downward spiral where we could have another 50 years of the Dark Ages. Does
yeah,
that make sense, like what I'm saying?
yeah. Well,
Where
and
like nothing happens, nothing progresses.
Nothing progresses, and there's just conflict, and it's people fighting over things like, and we could even digress where it's like it's really expensive and really hard to be able to have a global economy that can make advanced chips for iPhones. If we digress enough, in 20 years an iPhone could go back to be costing $10,000 because the cost to make it is almost impossible because every other country is fighting with each other. There's no more global trade, and there's so much hot conflict. Things are just being destroyed left and right. To make an iPhone is next to impossible. Anyway,
I'll counter your postulations with a question of my own. What do you think? Or I guess, what do you think the possibility is that we're heading into a techno feudalism in our society, meaning we're going to revert almost to a technology based feudalistic society?
so I recently have been hearing, I heard it like a month ago. Apparently, there's been a couple of books on it in the past couple of
Mhm.
years. I first heard about this a couple of years ago, or a couple of months ago in like January, I guess. I don't know what to think about it, but I also think I have a cognitive bias. in the
Mhm.
fact that I want to work in the technology sector. I think that technology is better for humans. I actually just ordered Techno Feudalism on Amazon 2 days ago. So my cognitive bias is I don't. So first off, I don't fully understand what some think of when they say techno feudalism.
Mhm.
Um, and also, how to, I think that technology makes everyone's lives better. Um, but I think that it's very like House of Cards feely, meaning
Yeah.
it's very difficult to make an iPhone. You need to have relative peace, large global trade. You need to cheaply be able to get very rare earth metals to a factory in China and then ship it to America when the iPhone is made. Um, I just I think that there are some aspects of how do I say this? I I'm gonna read the book and I need to make more opinions on it. But my synopsis would be I think that techno feudalism is too communist and socialist for me to get behind because techno feudalism is kind of like the haves and the have-nots. It's like
Yeah.
I I I do believe and I do think it's true that a lot of technology companies and technology people, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, have started to accumulate a lot of power, and that is true. And there needs to be a way that we can combat that. But I, I'm not sure that the this technology situation is going to turn into techno feudalism. How do I say this? I think that we're starting to have a correction right now. I don't know. I have so many thoughts on this. So, do I think that we're going to enter into a techno feudalist state? No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Here's my thing too, and going back to what you were talking about and asking about before with, I liked what you had said. A lot of people think that we live at the end of time, right, or at the end of our history or whatever. Um, and I don't think that's true. I mean, there's another thing that I think this should be a whole different, podcast we do something on. But
But
the theory that there is people before, like before our beginning of history, that there was civilizations, ancient civilizations that were, advanced or more advanced than we thought that they were before, like the Egyptians and people like
yeah.
that that died out and then reignited with
Oh yeah,
modern
that text that
civilization.
I sent last night.
Yeah, but so I think, like, that aside, because that could be a whole thing on its own. I think that there's two things that I would say on it. I think society is a lot more fragile than people think it is in terms of, it really wouldn't take a lot to upend what people think normal is in terms of our society. There's a really good Tom Clancy book, called The Sum of All Fears,
Oh,
and in the book,
I love the sum of all fears.
so good, dude. And in the book, terrorists set a nuke off at the Super Bowl.
I just
And
watched the movie the other day.
is that the one with Ben Affleck, or is that
Yeah,
with Ben
no,
Affleck? Yeah.
it's Ben Affleck. Yeah, because it's Jack
Um,
Ryan.
yeah. So, but I think of something like that, right? We had 9/11, but in terms of like what could have happened, 9/11 really even wasn't that big. I mean, it was big because a lot of people died, and it was the first time in a long time that many people have died in one singular event. But
And just that those were such iconic pieces of American architecture and infrastructure
yeah,
and like everything else, but they were mostly empty that
And
day.
the fact that Bush did it and he picked those towers on purpose because he knew it was a test
yeah.
piece of American politics. But anyway, we can talk about that later.
And
But
World Trade Center 7 and the Pentagon.
Yeah.
But what people don't realize is it really isn't, especially with the border, the open border that we've had for a while, and all these different things. It really is not going to take that much to create much more chaos, right? Imagine if we had a 9/11, but in 13 different states at once, right? And what that would do to the fragility of our society, because Americans in particular have gotten so weak because we've been so safe. And there's a few of us that have gone to war or that have been exposed to more dangers of the world that are not as weak, but
Or read
we're
history.
the we're the minority. Yeah, yeah, we're the vast minority. And so I think on that end of the spectrum, society's a lot more fragile than I think a lot
It-
of people assume that it is.
yeah, and something I want to say here, um, while I somewhat agree with that, I also kind of disagree just a little bit about this, only because um, there's just so much into this. But I actually think that while society is fragile because of the things that we're talking about, I agree with that. I actually also have faith in competence, meaning I think that there is a lot of capable, smart business owners and politicians and other people that how do I say, like if you're a business owner and you own a, like, let's say you're hypothetically Elon Musk and you own Tesla, you have more to gain keeping society on its rails than society falling off of its rails. And so I'm starting to think that while society is pretty fragile, every CEO that is capable and exists, and every like politician that exists, has a deep incentive to keep society on its rails. And so I think that there's a forcing function of powerful people to keep it on the rails. So I think that it's fragile, but it's also like it's malleable. And so
Well,
anyway,
I don't think, because I agree with you. I don't think that if something like a terrorist attack on the United States or throughout the world happened, that I don't think it would create an
a
apocalypse
dark
or
age.
some sort of anarchist dark age, right?
Oh,
Um,
there goes Gigs. You can just keep
Ladies
going.
and
um,
gentlemen,
I
Foo
think that
Fighters.
I think that humans, especially Americans, because I'm biased, but I think that humans are way more resilient too, right?
Yes.
I think society's fragile, but I think humans are resilient, and so I think if something crazy did happen, I mean, and to be completely honest with you, I think something should happen. Not in terms of like terrorists should come and blow us up, but I think that we're long overdue for
A
some sort of
reset.
reset.
Yeah.
Um, but I agree. And going back to the techno feudalism thing
Yeah.
that I asked you, I think that I think along those same lines, I don't think people would allow um, the technology companies and stuff to get as big as we
At least
are
in the
afraid that
US.
they're going to be. Yeah, yeah, 100%.
I,
So, because I mean, people are already more and more growing weary and aware of BlackRock and all these different shady companies of their dealings. And so I think if it got to a point where they did really become the Lord and Lady houses of America, then people would go in and
and
wreck them down.
I want to say something here, and I don't know if this is true. I'm just gonna like throw this out there because I've been workshopping this idea in my head. There could be the idea that technically there has already been a pseudo feudalism that has existed in America via oligarchs or oligarchic
Hmm.
families anyway. And what actually ended up happening is we had a transition of the power of whatever you would say a feudalist king lives or an oligarchic king lives from the Clintons and Obamas and other families that we don't even know about to the Zuckerbergs, the Gates, and the Mark Andreessen and the Elon Musks. And in my mind, I actually trust Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg to be the oligarchs of the United States economy more than I trust the Clintons, Obamas, the no names, and the Rockefellers
100%.
to be the oligarchs of the United States. I there's also this. I need to find the book. I haven't found the book. There's supposedly a book out there that is it's a philosophy book, a philosophy and politics book, and the whole premise of this book is the idea that throughout history there has actually never been these different types of democracy, monarchy, whatever. The book is something along the lines of everything is and always has been an oligarchy, which is
Mm.
there is always a set of 3 to 10 ruling classes in every society, in every Indian society, in every Chinese society, in every prehistory society. There has been oligarchies. And so it's like, if it is and always has been an oligarchy, what oligarchy would I choose? A highly competent, highly capable, understands economics, isn't eating children oligarchy, and that's the techno guys, And so
It's
if I had,
meritocracy.
yeah,
right?
it might have been a 15 or 50-year cycle of maybe the most capable oligarchs were the Clintons, even though they were bad people. Now, because of like selection and evolution, we have evolved that the oligarchs in our society are actually just the tech guys, because they understand the most about the world, and they knowingly or unknowingly took the power from the politicians. And we just had an oligarch change. And it's like, if that's the way you want to view it, I actually view that as a positive thing. But I am biased.
That I was gonna say that, and the fact that there are no secrets anymore.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Elon Musk and Mark Andreessen, the way that they run their companies is, we just let all of the information out, and we have the best people have the best ideas, because it's like, I'm the CEO of this company. I'm not the one that's going to have the best ideas to make the company move forward. I'm going to guide the ship, but it's the engineers below me. I need to let them have all the information to fix the problems. And it's like, I think that society, modern government might have just evolved into the fact that maybe it's better for the citizens to know more secrets than less secrets. Maybe it's better for society to have that. But I still think that even if this is true, there's still conflict coming.
Yeah.
Even
yeah.
in also, sorry, I thought about this yesterday while I was in the shower. The
What
sentence.
else were you doing in the shower?
Well, the sentence would be something along the lines of
Where's Homer?
what?
Where's Homer Simpson?
I don't know what the joke you're trying to say here. I've forgotten almost entirely what I was gonna say. What was I talking about before?
Shower.
I was just saying, yeah, you were in the shower with your Homer
jerking
Simpson
off in the
device.
shower.
We'll call it a device.
And
Is what you had.
Whatever.
You know what I'm talking
Whatever I said. What if I ever think of it again, I'll bring it back up. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, it was
the Homer Simpson device.
I'm gonna mute you. Give me. What was I?
I know what you're talking about now. I forgot about that.
Whatever.
Device.
No, it had something to do with Palmer Luckey, maybe. Which I want
Palmer Luckey
to talk.
super cool.
I want to talk about Palmer Luckey. What was he?
I knew you were gonna try and segue into him.
Well, what was he trying to say? Oh, come on. Whatever. This is life is meaningless.
What were you gonna say, Ryan?
What were you gonna say, Ryan? Yeah, let's see if we can bring it back on the rails. We just had a train wreck, and the carts are just falling off the back of the train right now.
That's what I'm here for. Oh, speaking of trains,
I don't know.
Thomas's 80th anniversary. Continue.
Thomas the.
Do you think Thomas the train or the tank engine would have gone to Epstein's Island?
No.
I think I know for a fact.
You don't think he's a kid diddler?
I don't think so.
I know for a fact that he served in World War II, though, in both World Wars, actually.
That's true.
Like it's actual canon.
Did he take people to Auschwitz, or did he take Americans to the front? What kind of train was he serving as?
It's actual like Thomas Cannon that he helped build a railroad to defend England.
Garrett in the background.
So he's a true American patriot, is what you're saying?
He is a true American patriot.
So is who's the guy in the sweaters?
That did the PSA about cocaine.
Yeah.
That was caught beating his shit in a movie. I forget his name though.
Oh no, that's P. That's P. Whatever his name is, Pee Wee Herman.
That's Pee Wee. Who are you talking about?
He's the soft-spoken dude. He had like, "Won't you be my neighbor?" That dude.
Oh, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, wasn't he like a Marine?
I'm pretty sure he was an Air Force. He was like an Air Force drill instructor, but it was back when like the Air Force was gangster.
Yeah.
Or something like that, or maybe he wasn't.
They could actually hit you.
Yeah, no, he was a drill instructor back when like DIs could like and did like abuse you.
Yeah, dude.
We need that in the military again. Hot take. Not a hot take
Yeah.
for you two, but a
Yeah.
hot take in general.
Yeah, dude.
I think
My
that
my instructors just stuck their fingers up my butt, but I liked it. So
Mine hit me for sure.
did he hit you really?
Yeah.
I
Dude,
got hit by an instructor.
have I never told you the story of like when I ran into one on accident because we were going around a corner? Like I was doing laundry detail one night, and like you had to have like your canteens on you at all times, and so I had them on like a waist belt, and I had them on like the back of my belt, and like you have to like give them 5 feet of space or whatever. But we were both walking around a corner at the same time and didn't hear the other guy. And so I rounded the corner with this like basket in my hand and like ran straight into this like dude, he was a solid guy. He was like probably about my height, but like just shredded. And he was like, he's like, you disgusting thing, get away! And like he like threw the basket out of my hands, like sent everyone's clothes, like freshly clean clothes everywhere. And then
Yeah, my
Hey
chief
Google
in
Trap
boot
Hawaii.
camp just trapped me in the laundry room, closed the door behind him.
Yeah.
He just said, "What happens in here stays in here," and I was like, "Yes, chief."
No, I got thrown to the ground basically so hard that my canteens like broke. They like burst open and sprayed
Nice.
water everywhere. Cause he like suplexed me or whatever. He like picked me up, like drilled me into the ground.
But yeah, I think
and then the next morning I got in trouble because my canteens were broken. And then I got hazed again.
Good.
That's how it works. Yeah, dude. Our instructors would come in and for room inspections during selection and just throw sand in our room during the inspection and be like, "It's dirty," and we're like, "Okay, cool."
Okay.
We failed.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
or they'd make you go get wet and sandy and then come back into the room and be like, "Why is your room sandy and wet?" And we're like, "I don't know. It's a mystery."
Yeah. I think. So what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna change the topic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Did you have something to have? I just watched an interesting video on. I guess there's a abandoned military base in, I think it's Arizona. Have you heard of Gideon? Have you heard of this military base? And there's a ton of like scientific people that have come out and said like, yeah, there's actually this secret like seven layer base underneath this mountain in Arizona where we have made contact with aliens and all these different crazy things. And the crazy part is because you hear about that all the time. The crazy part is, I'll have to get the name, is that there's actual like legit physicists and scientists that have said like, oh yeah, like we've actually either worked there or I've been in contact with people there. Like these people are not just crazies off the street that have talked about this.
They're like normal, like they're like the Joe Rogan guys. The guys that are like, he's like a perfectly reasonable guy that comes on and like Joe Rogan's talking to him about mushrooms or whatever, and he's like, "Can I ask you about this?"
Your audio changed.
Oh yeah, it's because I'm echoing.
Oh, you're good.
Garrett's computer.
This I am super wary of. So whenever you're dealing with anything having to do with the CIA, I get very worried. And because they love hey, welcome in, Garrett. You can show your face if you want to, or you can just listen in. I am very wary of like what do they call it? Not a blind, like a double blind, where they lie and then they have plausible denial. What's the word I'm trying to look for is like where there's like a spy and then they're like a double spy or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, it's like false flag operations.
Oh yeah, they do. They just do either false flag operations or something else. And one of the tactics of the CIA is just add so much information that you'll never be able to find the actual truth. So it's like okay, so I'm dealing with the CIA. And so there's like 5 different possible outcomes. Either nothing is happening, there's no ships, there's no aliens or whatever else, and they're covering something up. Second, there is ships and they are somehow covering them up. Or there is ships, but we don't even know how to know where they are, what they're talking about, because there's so much false flag information we can't even find it out. And then it's like it's like, where does any of this even come from? Or there's just so much false information. I just never know what's true. And then there's people like Joe Rogan and me and whoever else that wants it to be true so bad. So it's like they could be stringing you along with this huge fake story. So like whenever I hear this story, I'm like, okay, this connects to the idea that Area 51 did used to be the place where they tested ships. But now they moved it and there's an Area 52. And they're like, oh, so you're supposed to believe Area 52 is now in Arizona. And they made contact with aliens. And then it's like they find all these people that could be actors that are. So I don't know. Every time I get twisted and I get spaghetti in my head because I'm just like, it could be 1,000 false flags. And I don't know. I think about this a lot because I want the aliens to be real, you know?
It was me?
I don't know. I think for me, I don't know about the alien stuff. I mean, I'll just be open. I did not see any aliens in my military career, but
I saw some strange things, but I did not see aliens yet.
yeah, unfortunately. But
A lot of penises.
I
though.
will say, because a lot of people like I know Joe Rogan has said this of like, oh, like if there's that many people involved in a secret, someone is going to tell the secret. But I actually would disagree. Like having been in some areas of the military where there are a lot of top secret clearances needed to know certain information, and I think the government does a good enough job at scaring the shit out of people involved with that operation, where like you breathe a word of this and we will send you to Leavenworth for, you know, your entire life. And make it look like
kill
you're
you.
an insane person. Yeah. Or just kill you or call you, you know, plant kitty porn on your computer or whatever. In which they, you know, they've done before. And so I don't know.
The brother of the Las Vegas shooter.
Yeah.
How
Oh,
he was
dude,
like,
that
yeah, I
whole
don't think
thing
my.
was crazy.
He's like, I don't think my brother did this, and then the next day they're like 50,000 gigabytes of CPU on your computer.
And I know enough. I know too many operators who are way into themselves enough to think that like what they're doing on this classified military operation
God complex.
is, yeah, exactly. I know so many operators that have that mindset of like they would for sure commit a false flag operation on the United States purely because they think that like
It's cool.
I'm cool now, you know. Like I'm in this unit, I'm in this JSOC unit that they've tasked with blowing up a mall in Ohio, and it's like, you know, that's going to be their claim to fame in the bars for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
But
so I don't know. So I want it to be true. I hope that it's true. Do I think that it's true? Right now, I am like 10% thinking it's true, 90% thinking it's not true. And I don't think. I think if they can keep it from us, they can keep it from Elon. Because Elon's thing is like, if I make the world's most advanced rockets. If someone was going to know, it would be me. He's like, I have the highest level of all of the security clearances, is what his claim is. But I'm like, if there is some rogue element of the military that only needs like $50 million a year to maintain itself, and it's been doing that for the past 100, since Roswell, we'll say. But no one knows about it except for you get recruited into it and you get selected from the military by a recruiter that like looks for specific types of people, and there's like 50 people on the project at one point ever. That's it. And since Roswell, and it's like no one in the military knows that it exists, and it's run and managed by 50 people that are very secretive. They know what they're doing, and they only need a small amount of money compared to like the military budget to make it happen. And it's like that is the 10% that I could see happening is a small group of 50 to maybe 25, half being scientists, half being military personnel, maybe even less military personnel, um, on some base that's funded in the middle of a desert somewhere. And like I don't know, you know what I mean? Like that could be the only way that I could see this surviving this long in that way is such a small amount of people. Yeah, a lot of pluck.
I was just
You're good, go.
okay. I mean, the one thing that makes me like think about a lot is that like, why is it that like every single like pilot that you talk to, whether it's like Navy, Air Force, like Marines, like if you sit down and you ask like any modern day like fighter pilot or like jet pilot, like anyone that has access to any of those, like their airframe has the like super advanced like strike radar and like thermal systems and stuff like that. If you're like, oh, have you ever seen anything like this? Like every single like F-18, F-35, like A-10 pilot, whatever, will be like, oh yeah, I've seen stuff. Like I've seen like some sort of like heat flare pop up on my thermals that looks like some sort of like aircraft or like the unidentified aerial phenomenon. And the
Yeah.
fact that it's like such a real thing that there's a whole Air Force unit that like their sole purpose in life is they collect every single like encounter that DoD aircraft have with UAPs, and they log it and they classify it, and like there's a whole system and like reporting system. And it's like and it's gotten to the point where like every single pilot experiences it so much, and like everyone just sees it that's like, oh yeah, we don't know what this is, but like it happens to all of us.
Yeah,
I think a lot of those, I mean, it could be aliens, but I think a lot of those could probably be chalked up to classified experiment,
Oh, for sure.
experiments with aircraft. And I think like, so there's an episode back in like 2000. Do you remember Future Weapons, that TV
Yeah,
show
yeah,
with the bald dude? I think he was like a SEAL or something before.
yeah.
Um, where he was actually talking to a DARPA guy about this like lightning gun or whatever. And the DARPA guy was like, this gun really doesn't matter. It's just something fun that we came up with. But he said the things that we're working on, you won't know about for like 10 years.
yeah,
And so there's always that mindset of like 10 years behind. What we know that the military has, there's more advanced stuff than that. And I saw a little bit of that in special operations of like DevGru, right? One of DevGru's main purposes is to test a lot of the up and coming equipment that are being produced by the military industrial complex by these classified projects
yeah,
out, in Salt Lake and DARPA and different areas. Um, and they'll feed them into these top tier units first in order to test them. But those never get distributed. Even the guys I talked to from DevCrew in these various units, um, they'll because of their clearances and stuff will just straight up be like, yeah, I can't tell you about anything. But so I think a lot of it might be that where these pilots, these Navy pilots, that it's compartmentalized, right? Like these Navy pilots will see maybe a drone, a super advanced drone that's being tested out, by an unknown government or by our government,
yeah,
and they're not keyed in on what that drone is.
yeah. I just
Well,
I wonder how deep the compartmentalization goes. Is the compartmentalization sophisticated enough that we have aliens or not? I don't know.
yeah. Where
Yeah.
did they get like that thing? But I mean, there's the story of the Air Force pilot that was like testing not drones, jets. The first guy he was like the first Air Force jet pilot in like the 40s or whatever. Um, like he used to dress up as like a gorilla. He'd put on like a gorilla suit with like a top hat and like a monocle and like a pipe or whatever, and he would fly like experimental jets so that like because they would do like intercepts on they practice like intercepts with it on like B-17s or like regular Air Force planes that were doing training in the same area. And
Yep.
he would do these like high speed passes on them at speeds that like no other plane could reach and stuff like that. And then these pilots would land and be like, "Oh my gosh, like I saw this plane without a propeller flying at like this like insanely high speed." And everyone would be like, "Oh really?" And then the guy would be like, "Yeah, and there was a gorilla flying it. I caught that." And then like they would send them all to the Air Force psychologists and stuff like that. And Air Force psychologists would be like, "Dude, we're gonna like lay your flight hours back or whatever if you don't stop this
Yeah.
nonsense, because like everyone knows planes can't fly without propellers. And like, are you telling
Yeah.
me that a gorilla flew a plane at at a speed unreachable by any like known aircraft? Like that's crazy talk. Like
That's
you're
awesome.
crazy. You're insane. Like no one believes you, and it was just because they wanted to keep the American jet program secret.
Yeah.
And like how many, what do we do now? Like how many times like we've always tested stuff on like the regular like rank and file military guys and like not told them, like the freaking MK Ultra programs and like
Well,
weaponized
there's that
LSD and
document.
everything else.
There's that document they offer you at the very beginning of boot camp. That's like you get extra pay if you volunteer for test programs, and you don't get to choose or even if you ever end
or
up in a test
or
program.
if you know.
But yeah, it's a legit document we got during our med processing in boot camp. That was like, hey, if you want, I don't even remember what it was. It was like 50 extra bucks a paycheck or something stupid. And they were like, if you sign this, then we get to pull you at any time to be in a test, in an experiment that we choose.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Well,
I can't remember if we had those or not, but if we did, I probably signed it.
Well, and I don't know if it was a Navy thing, because I mean, the Navy would probably be the perfect place. I mean, most of the Navy personnel, this is going to be a controversial statement, but most of the Navy personnel
comfortable
is
getting probed.
disposable.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's comfortable
most
getting probed too.
military personnel, I feel like, are kind of disposable. That's like their
Yeah,
whole
but
purpose in life.
I mean, so if you're going to take anyone, like take a sailor off a ship that's, cleaning toilets out and
Yeah.
be like, hey, you want to come take this pill and see if it kills you?
And he'd be like, "Well, yeah, my life can't get any worse. Why not?"
Yeah.
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 Um. Anyway, I think we've been going for like an hour and a half now. We can close it out. Um. What I was gonna say to close a couple things to close it out. Um. I don't know if Gideon and I were talking to you, Ryan. Oh yeah, we were gaming and talking about it. I kind of went down the rabbit hole and was looking up the logistics of us recording a pod in that cave.
Oh, yeah.
Um, uh, Obviously we'll have to do a little bit more training and get a little bit stronger. Actually, this is something we're actually gonna continue a little bit longer. So yeah, we're serious about that. So we're gonna continue kind of making plans for that. It's gonna be a long while if we can do that or not. But that kind of transitions into we all need to get stronger for that. And me and Gideon are starting to do a little bit of some mountain climbing training. We're kind of in the early stages of it, but we hopefully we can get. I read a book. It has a bunch of stuff in it. We're doing some of that stuff, and I'm noticing some results, and so kind of going a little bit further. But Ryan, I was thinking we should do totally separate from the podcast, but we should go try to do Rainier, and we should start training for Rainier.
Yeah.
And I think that you are someone that likes like functional strength and stuff like
I
that.
believe it's called McKinley.
Oh, sorry. No, that's
Denali.
Denali. So it was Denali.
Oh,
We're talking about Rainier. Rainier is Washington. McKinley
that's right.
is
Sorry.
Alaska. I think that
I think he was a great guy.
you should or we should look into doing some training, and you should look at the physiology, the exercise physiology and the training of mountain climbing. I think that you would really like it for like what you're into and what you want to do. specifically like Spartan race stuff and just functional strength, it might stay same weight, or you might get like it. It's not to get big muscles, unfortunately. From what I've learned, is if you want really good functional strength, you're actually almost never training for hypertrophy, like to failure.
Yeah.
You're training. It's a lot of cardio and a lot of like strength training, and the strength training is like you're doing it's based on max reps and everything like that. But I have me and Gideon and Trey starting to do this. The key feature of this training plan is you can't go 2 days without missing cardio.
Yeah.
And it builds on itself over the courses of months and years to get stronger. And so hopefully that's why we're working on this now. So when Gigs gets back, we can make sure to go do like a strength training test to make sure that we're all set to do the cave and to go do Rainier. But I personally am serious about doing Rainier. I'll do it even if none of you guys do it with me. But we'll kind of keep talking about it. But the idea would be sometime next summer, or next summer would be when that we would want to do it, and we can kind of have updates on that. Are you like semi open to maybe looking into doing that? I know you said you have like a trainer for it, or not a trainer.
Yeah. Well,
you know a guy that does
yeah,
that.
a guide. Yeah, one of my buddies guides Denali, or not Denali. Now you got me talking about Denali.
Rainier.
Rainier.
It's Whitney, but
he does Hood and Rainier. But yeah, no, I'd love to do that. I'm training for the Spartan right now. We have our Spartan races in July, and so a lot of that does combine the strength training with.
It would probably be.
The Spartan race, this one in Huntsville, it's a 3,000-foot.
Alabama?
No, Utah.
Oh, okay.
There's no way you're getting a 3,000-foot elevation gain in Alabama, my brother.
Oh, I'm so dumb. I was thinking, because that's only Huntsville. It's close to, yeah.
So you still get that hike, but I mean, obviously the obstacles require a lot of that strength.
You said it's 3,000?
Yeah, it's brutal. So you start at Snow Basin, you start at the lodge, and you go all the way up to the peak of Snow Basin, and then back down.
Wow.
It's brutal. But
do you have an organized training plan? Yeah, or like what are you doing for that?
I do. It's one I started doing for last year's Spartan race, but I've amended it because last year I was a lot more injured.
I see. Yeah.
So I had to.
Or is it
change it? But
are you doing a lot of like heart rate zone training, or what is it mostly like gym hit stuff?
So it's a combination. So most days I spend at the gym, especially right now in the winter. But once the warmer days start to hit, and I should be doing more snowshoeing, and when I do snowshoeing, that falls into more of the zones, right? The zone training. And I still can do it at the gym on the treadmill or on the stair stepper and things like that. But as of right now, I'm building up a little bit more strength and then cutting at the same time, but not in terms of like cardio cut. I do cardio. I've been running and improving my running, but once summer hits, or at least spring, and things start to warm up a little bit, that's when I'll hit a lot more of the zone training with actual hikes and actual climbing.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to build that strength up and then cut and get ready for the zone training.
But yeah, well, later on, I want to get together and go over some of this stuff because it's super interesting, and I think it'll help you out a lot, and hopefully it'll help us out a lot to do that. But because I didn't know anything about it, and after I read and verified the information in this book, I realized that I had exercise physiology almost entirely wrong. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm kind of changing it up, and it's been fun, but we'll see.
Yeah. When I was telling Trey, I found flights to Nepal for like 1,100, $1,200. Like, it's pretty cheap, and
I wanna go.
it's like a 30+ hour flight, but or I guess series
With
of flights
9
to get to like
layovers.
Kathmandu. Yeah, but I was telling Trey that I think that would be a super fun trip that we could do as a a boys trip, because we're not going to hike Everest, but we could at least get to the base camp, and even getting to the base camps, we probably
It's
want to
pretty
train
gnarly.
for.
Yeah.
It's pretty gnarly, and so that could be another fun trip that we plan for.
I want to hit
Um,
Fuji if we're talking about international mountains.
Fuji,
Japan.
Kilimanjaro is definitely one of my
Kilimanjaro is one of mine because it's one of the 7. So it's like, oh, I hit
Yeah.
one of the 7 summits. But yeah,
and it would fulfill. I need to get to Africa too and do a trip to Africa, so it kind of hits
You
both
stayed
of
in
those
the
for me.
Navy. You could have had Africa.
I know I could have
could
gone
have
to
been
Djibouti.
Djibouti. All right, and there's all that
I
stuff
was
out in
in
Somalia.
Djibouti.
Or not Somalia. What were the ones that are sending drones out to the cargo containers?
It's like
Houthis?
Yemen, and yeah, there's a
They're
ton
the
of areas that they're-
Houthis out in Yemen, I think. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Trump bombed Somalia. He bombed a terrorist leader in the caves in Somalia.
Nice. I heard about that. That was nice. But
Yeah.
all of that.
Crazy that we have bombs that can hit caves, by the way.
Yeah. It's crazy. We have bombs that can see black people in the dark.
Yeah.
It's insane.
We had that in the 40s. No, but real quick, this training, the mountain training, it all feeds off of itself, and it like each year you get better at it.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I'm like a believer, and I'm like fully whatever pilled on this, on like cardio physiology and making yourself stronger that way.
I'm always looking for things to learn from, and so I'd love to check it out.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we're gonna close this out. But anything else anyone wants to add to anything? Gigs? The gamer word? No, I'm kidding.
There's people on the Hollow Earth. I'd make them my slaves.
Oh. Did you?
Probably that would be my final statement on everything.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I'd be okay with that slavery.
Yeah. And
Slavery.
also this is going to be, we're going to add this at the end of this podcast. Actually, I'm going to close it out with this. I go on vacation, so I'm going to be gone for the next 2 weeks. But then after that, I'm going to be spending a lot of my time after work on this podcast and getting short form media going and doing more stuff with Ryan. Ryan wants to do a lot of just like YouTube stuff and whatever else. And while he's one of our personal friends, he's also doing that. So whenever we get this going, whoever ever comes back and watches this or listens to this, we'll probably have more of him, and we're just trying to be friends, hang out, and talk about cool stuff, and do whatever. And so we're gonna start seeing a lot more of that. So that's kind of what we're doing. That's at least my commitment, is like between Gigs and I, we're gonna have a little bit of a plan of like editing some of the stuff, when and where and how to post it, and it's gonna take a little bit of work, but that's kind of my commitment to doing this. So it'll be fun. I'm excited.
Gigs is gonna mew more.
Gigs is gonna mew more.
Yeah.
We're gonna do.
I'm gonna goon more.
I have kind of maxed out my gooning. Sometimes I wake up and I'm still gooning, and I'm just like dying, and I'm just like I gotta
go till I see blood.
Well, usually when I gel, blood happens in the first 3 to 4 seconds.
When it starts turning pink.
Yeah. So we'll see how this goes, but my commitment is we're gonna try to do this podcast once a week, and we're gonna try to get more people watching the podcast, people that are in a nebulous idea of interested in like geopolitics, military, technology. It kind of seems to be the things that we're talking about right now. I seem to talk a lot about technology. And then we try to do comedy whenever it's Gigs and I. We kind of like feed off of each other. We're trying to build on that, but we'll see what ends up happening. And we'll go from there. And yeah.
Just because Gigs says a lot of stupid things doesn't mean Gigs is stupid. He just likes saying stupid things.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately, while that's true, almost no one's gonna hear you say that, and we're not gonna do that disclaimer at the beginning of every video. But I think people know that about podcasts, and people know that about
No one
comedians.
should ever hear me say that.
Yeah, no one should. I'll bleep that out for you.
Yeah, and then everyone will wonder.
It's like, is Theo Vaughn retarded, or is Theo Vaughn just actually really funny? He just puts
Dude,
on an
yeah,
act
dude.
all the time.
Like every comedian that Joe Rogan ever has on his podcast sits down and says like the deepest things ever, while also saying some of the funniest things ever. You're just like, these guys aren't stupid; they're just funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.